Bella grew up in a family that showered her with true love and unwavering support. As an only child, she was a priority and was given all the beautiful things life had to offer. She was granted the freedom to make decisions for herself. Her parents always guided her decisions without imposing their own will, ensuring that she was comfortable with every choice she made. Bella's parents were the cornerstone of her happiness, and she cherished her close relationship with them deeply. She pursued her studies at the University of Lagos UNILAG, where she graduated with a degree in chemical engineering. Bella's father was a prominent politician known for his wealth, respect, and influence, while her mother owned one of the largest plazas in Lagos. Bella's life was a whirlwind of experiences, from the height of love, wealth, to the lowest of pains and heartbreak. She embraced life as it came, not setting high expectations. Nothing mattered more to Bella than her late parents, whom she lost in a tragic fire that consumed their home. It was the most painful day of her life, a pain she had to carry since she was 21. After graduating from the University of Lagos, she was assigned to serve in Lagos by the influence of her father. Following the mandatory 3 weeks camp, she began her place of primary assignment at the prestigious oil company in Lagos. This marked her first experience of earning a salary, as her father had always provided for her and her mother had indulged her every whims. Bella was very much a daddy and mommy's girl. One Sunday evening, after enjoying a delicious meal prepared by her mother, Bella complimented her and asked for the recipe. Her mother owned a bustling restaurant in the plaza that never lost its charm. After dinner, the family retired for the night. Bella's father, Mr. Donatus, had an early morning flight the next day and went to bed very early. Around 2 a.m., Bella woke up to prepare a special meal for her father before his trip. While cooking, she went to her room to get her phone and got engrossed in Instagram. She laid on her bed, lost in the phone, and slept off, forgetting about the meal on the gas. Mr. Donatus, who was asleep, smelled something burning. He woke up and woke his wife, asking if she was preparing something. Realizing the danger, they both rushed downstairs, only to find the kitchen engulfed in flames. Mrs. Donatus, needing an inhaler due to her asthma, started to panic. Mr. Donatus instructed her to go to her room to get her inhaler while he fetches Bella. Poor Bella, unaware of the unfolding disaster, was still asleep. Her father burst into her room, calling her name. She woke up in confusion as he led her out of the house. As they fled, Bella asked about her mother. Her father told her to go outside while he goes back to the house for his wife. Bella ran out in tears, waiting helplessly as the fire grew more intense. Neighbors gathered and the fire department arrived, but Mr. and Mrs. Donatus were still inside. Mrs. Donatus, overwhelmed by the smoke, had already lost consciousness. When her husband found her, he wept over her lifeless body, unable to leave her behind. As he attempted to carry her out, the flame trapped them both. Their bodies were eventually brought out, covered. The entire estate mourned the heartbreaking loss. Bella, seeing her parents' lifeless body, fainted from the shock. This tragedy left a deep, indelible mark in her life. She was rushed to the hospital by a kind neighbor, Mr. Charles. After regaining consciousness and being discharged, Bella confided in the doctor and Mr. Charles that she had no place to go, having lost everything in the fire. Mr. Charles felt so sorry for her and offered to take her in. Bella began living with Mr. Charles and his family from that very moment. Each day was a struggle for Bella, haunted by the memories of her parents' tragic death, which she blamed herself for. The guilt and grief were heavy burdens, and the pains was something she couldn't wish for her worst enemy. This experience marked the most painful and the unforgettable chapter of her life. Mr. Charles and his wife were compassionate and supportive, treating Bella as their own child. They provided her with love and constant words of encouragement, trying to help her heal. Their children were studying abroad, while Mr. Charles and his wife lived in Nigeria, managing their own businesses. With Mr. Charles' assistance, Bella was able to legally secure all her parents' assets and belongings. She was grateful for his help, But the reminders of her parents were too painful for her to bear. She decided to leave behind the material possessions as they only intensified her grief. Living with Mr. Charles and his wife provided Bella with a semblance of stability and the opportunity to slowly rebuild her life. Despite the overwhelming sorrow, the kindness of the family offered her a glimmer of hope for a future where she could find some peace and solace. At 23 years old, Bella couldn't help but think about all that had happened to her. It's been 2 years already since the devastating fire claimed her parents' life and her boyfriend left her. George Rommel was her boyfriend, whom she had been with since she was 20 but disappeared without a trace. George had been Bella's first love, a relationship her parents had permitted and supported. They had spent countless time together, behaving much like married couple. Despite George's philandering habits, Bella had turned a blind eye, confronting herself with the knowledge that he always introduced her to his friends and other girls as his girlfriend. This assurance kept her from making it a major issue in their relationship. However, 2 years into the relationship, George vanished. He stopped calling, messaging, and visiting. Bella was disturbed, visiting his house and contacting his friend, but no one offered any information. Finally, one of George's friends, after seeing how frustrated she was, decided to help her with the truth. He revealed that George had left the country, unable to handle the emotional burden of filling the void left by her parents. He advised Bella to stop searching for George as he was not coming back. This revelation shattered Bella. George, who had been her rock, abandoned her at the moment she needed him the most. The heartbreak was profound, adding to her already overwhelming grief. She felt as though the world had turned its back on her, questioning why life had dealt with her in such a cruel way. She returned to Mr. Charles' house to grieve. Mrs. Charles, who had always been supportive, took an active interest in Bella's well-being. She frequently checked on her, ensuring she was coping with the grief. However, Bella kept the pain of her relationship with George to herself. The Charles' family had given her a safe haven and treated her with kindness, but she couldn't bring herself to burden them with the heartbreak of her lost love. Instead, she silently carried the weight of her sorrow, finding solace in the quiet support of Mr. and Mrs. Charles. Barely a month after learning that George had left the country, Bella received a text message from George. Her heart leaped at the sight of his name, as she missed him so dearly and longed to hear from him. However, as she opened the message, her anticipation turned to devastation. The text reads, "Bella, I'm sorry I had to leave the way I did. I didn't want you to think it's because I don't love you anymore, that's why I left you. I do love you, but the truth is I can't be with a broken person. You are broken and I can't take care of you or try to make you happy while denying myself happiness. I love you and that's why I had to leave. I don't want to hurt you further or be a boyfriend who doesn't care. Goodbye, Bella, and forget about me." Whoa! This message ran Bella into deep depression. The realization that George had abandoned her because of her grief over her parents was an incredible bitter pill to swallow. Her tears seemed endless, and each passing day felt heavier than the last. Fortunately, Mrs. Charles was a constant source of comfort and support. Sensing Bella's increasing despair, she managed to coax the story out of her. Hearing about George's cruel abandonment deeply saddened Mrs. Charles. She embraced Bella, offering the kind of solace and advice only a mother could provide. She urged Bella to be strong, reminding her that these were her trial times and she needs to be strong. To help Bella cope, Mrs. Charles took her phone away, ensuring she could have a break from constant reminder of her pain until she was emotionally ready to handle it again. 2 years had passed since the tragic death of her parents, and Bella had slowly begun to heal. With Charles's family unwavering support, she found peace. Bella's grief hadn't disappeared entirely, but she had learned to live with it, drawing strength from the love and kindness around her. Mrs. Charles' words of encouragement and the loving environment provided by Charles's family played a crucial role in Bella's recovery. She gradually found herself again ready to face the future. She tried to put her life back together. Bella realized it was time to start afresh after 2 years of mourning. She hadn't been working since the tragic loss of her parents, and she felt she needed to begin anew. Remembering how much she had always loved her mother's cooking and how passionately her mother had run her restaurant, Bella decided to revive the brand her mother built. She knew it would be a fitting tribute to her mother's legacy and a way to keep her memory alive. Bella's father, a prominent politician, had amassed numerous properties across Lagos and Abuja. With Mr. Chelsea's help, he managed to secure all of her father's assets. However, rather than pursuing her initial passion for office work, she decided to focus solely on resurrecting her mother's restaurant business. Her primary concern was to live a quiet life, honoring her parents' memory without any distraction. As Bella began to rebuild her life, Mr. Charles and his wife were her steadfast supporters. They were thrilled to see her take positive steps and encourage her wholeheartedly. Bella became incredibly fond of Mr. Charles, who treated her with the same love and care her father had shown. He showered her with thoughtful gifts, praises her efforts, and provided unwavering support. Mrs. Charles, a kind and nurturing woman, was delighted to see Bella opening her heart to love and acceptance once more. Bella regularly updated Mr. and Mrs. Charles on everything happening in her life, sharing her progress with the restaurant and her personal milestones. She had become like a daughter to them, and they cherished her as their own. Each night before Bella went to sleep, Bella prayed for God's protection over her new parents, grateful for the love and stability they provided. With their encouragement, Bella poured her energy into the restaurant, determined to see it flourish. She was driven by the memory of her mother and the desire to maintain the business reputation. As she worked tirelessly, she found a renewed sense of purpose and direction. It was the end of the year. Mr. and Mrs. Charles's children, Chooks and Queen, were returning to Nigeria. Chooks, their first son, was the heir apparent to C&C Furniture, the largest furniture company in Lagos, and Queen, their only daughter, was a true daddy's girl. They couldn't wait for the arrival of their children. When Chooks and Queen finally arrived, the house was filled with joy and laughter. The family reunion brought a vibrant energy, and the home felt complete once again. Bella was very busy at the plaza, hadn't returned home yet. She had been working tirelessly. When she eventually arrived home, she loved the atmosphere of the house, and she quickly remembered how her life used to be full of fun and laughter. She went over to Mr. Charles, hugged him warmly and greeted him, and did the same to Mrs. Charles. Bella turned to Chooks and Queen, who were curious about the new face in the home, and she greeted them. Queen and Chooks were curious to know who she was, and Mr. Charles introduced her as their new sister. This sparked curiosity as they wanted to understand how she became part of the family, but Mr. Charles gently told them that it's a story for another day. Chooks and Queen welcomed Bella with an open heart. As days passed, Chooks' curiosity about Bella only intensified as she was given special treatment by her parents. He genuinely wanted to know her better, but Bella, valuing her space and privacy, kept her distance. Queen, on the other hand, felt Bella was encroaching on her special bond with her father as he talks about her more often, and she became jealous, not wanting to have anything to do with Bella. Chooks tried a lot to engage Bella in conversations, but she remained unavailable, focused on what she was doing and reluctant to let anyone in. This persisted for months until Chooks became so angry at Bella's snobbish acts and decided to take actions. Chooks confided in his father about Bella's behavior. Mr. Charles, who understood Bella's plight and the reasons behind the action, called for a family meeting in the absence of Bella. He gathered his children and wife and shared Bella's touching story, explaining why he had to take her in as his own child. As Mr. Charles recounted the tragic events that had shaped Bella's life, tears flowed freely down his children's eyes. They were moved by Bella's story and realized the depth of Bella's suffering and the courage it took for her to carry on. With newfound empathy, they vowed to be kinder and more understanding towards her, hoping that she would eventually feel comfortable enough to open up to them. Chooks and Queen became the most supportive and caring siblings to Bella. Bella was so surprised when Queen called her sister. She had always wanted a sibling, and so that brought smile to her face. Queen was delighted by Bella's reaction and asked if they could be sisters, which Bella gladly accepted. This marked the beginning of a strong sisterly bond between Queen and Bella. On the other hand, Chook struggled to connect with Bella. He harbored reservations about Bella becoming his sister and opposed his father's decision to adopt her. Unknowingly to him, Bella overheard their discussion, which fueled her reluctance to engage with Chooks. No matter how Chooks tried to be friendly with Bella, she gave him no attention. Bella and Queen became very inseparable, while Chooks found himself battling with his emotions, realizing that he was falling helplessly in love with Bella. Bella proved to be tough, a hard nut to crack, continuously refusing any of his attempts to connect with her. She was driving him crazy. Chooks was unable to break through Bella's emotional wall, leaving him tormented and emotionally traumatized. One fateful day, Chooks mustered up courage to confront Bella about his feelings. Finding her in the kitchen, he asked for a moment of her time, but she refused. He was fueled by anger and he poured out his heart to her, expressing his love and questioning why she insisted on making his life miserable. He understood that she had had to suffer a lot from the death of her parents, but it had made her very unfriendly. Chooks poured out all his feelings, leaving Bella stunned by his raw honesty. As Chooks stormed out of the kitchen, his mother, who had been standing nearby, overheard everything he said. She realized the extent of her son's emotional turmoil that made him sound that way. She confided in her husband and they understood why he opposed Bella being adopted as their own child. Mrs. Charles took it upon herself to speak to Bella while Mr. Charles spoke to his son, advising him not to force love or attention from Bella. He reminded his son that true love should be mutual and that if Bella felt the same way, she would come around in her own time. He was so grateful for his father's wisdom and understanding and expressed his heartfelt appreciation. Mrs. Charles also approached her son for a conversation, reassuring him of her love and support. Chooks was so grateful to his mother, thanking her for her understanding and support that without her, he wouldn't have been able to navigate his feelings for Bella. He decided to give Bella space as she needed it. As the day drew to a close, Bella found herself summoning up courage to go have a conversation with Chooks. Knocking on his door, she entered, finding Chooks sitting on his bed, lost in thought. With a deep breath, Bella began to explain the reasons behind her action. She revealed how the pains of her past had left her feeling so vulnerable and unable to trust anyone, especially when he objected to his father adopting her as his child. She acknowledged the fact that he had been nice to her and apologized for being uptight. Chook's heart was heavy with emotion as Bella opened up to him. He realized the impact his action had on her and felt deeply sorry for not making things clear. With sincerity in his voice, Chooks explained that his love for her had beclouded his sense of judgment, causing him to act impulsively in an attempt to protect his feelings. Chooks confessed his undying love for Bella, acknowledging that he had had to struggle to come to terms with his feelings for her. He expressed his fear of losing her and tears poured down Bella's eyes as she listened to Chooks' heartfelt confession. In that moment, All the walls she had built around her heart began to crumble, replaced by a newfound sense of understanding and acceptance. She reached out to Chuck's hands, offering him an assuring smile and a promise to take things one step at a time. Chooks and Bella embarked on a journey of friendship and love, supported by their cheerleader and guardians, Mr. and Mrs. Charles. Thank you all so very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it as we anticipate the next part of the story, which reveals the trials they both faced in their newfound love and when George, Bella's ex-boyfriend, showed up. See you guys in the next video. Until then, stay splendid.